on the trail. Good boy, Stormy. Keep her on the trail.
It just boggles my mind, the vastness of this place. And so many people just scattered through so many remote areas. The only way to get in there is by plane.
And we'd like to just get a little picture of some of the mission activity that's going on here in the state of Alaska.
And let's remember all of those hardy pioneers that first came to spread the message here in Alaska. They had a sense of spirit and adventure and a love for the message as we know it. And then when they first came to Alaska here, they were the ones who fell in love with the country and with the people, and many of them stayed.
They came to this isolated, culturally diverse, and sometimes unforgiving land. Many gave their all, their creativity, dedication, and their very lives, sharing the light God entrusted to them across Alaska. In the late 1800s, Ada Sparhawk converted to the Seventh-day Adventist faith under the influence of the teachings she heard in Battle Creek Sanitarium in Michigan. In 1899, at Fort Wrangell, Alaska, Ada married James Young. They moved to Ketchikan, a little town of about 200. Ada's spacious home above the store was where she met with her brother Leif as they worshiped alone until 1925. In the summer of 1901, a young couple, Mr. and Mrs. Walter Harper, left Seattle on their way to Skagway to distribute literature. A postcard from Juneau, marked July 3rd, 1901, states,
"We're still here, but God gives us success. Yesterday at Douglas Island and Douglas City, the Lord gave us 28 books and miscellaneous orders worth over $63. I worked until 9 p.m. and it was still light."
Yesterday, my wife went out with the Desire of Ages, but took no orders. Today, she worked 3 hours and took 2 orders, and God gave me 18 orders.
The first mission boat, called the Evangel, was purchased by the church in 1909. The 24-foot-long Evangel was powered by a little 2-cycle 6-horsepower engine. Top speed was just 7 miles per hour. It was equipped with 2 steamer trunks full of books, a stove, bedding, and provisions. The pilot house was a mere 2.5 by 2.5 feet. For 20 years, the Evangel plied the waters of the Southeast from village to village, carrying the good news of the gospel.
My name is George S. James Jr. My Tlingit name is Long Way Wrong Raven. I'm from the Kooyoo tribe in southeastern Alaska. There's the only island in southeastern Alaska that we know of that has its indigenous name. When the first missionaries came up here to Alaska, our people knew that there was a Trinity. God the Father is Kian Ka Wu, and the Son is Duyes Sateh, that's Jesus. Of course, depending on the area you're from, they can call him Kekean Yit. And also the Holy Spirit has got a longer name than God the Father and Son put together. His name is Jesus Kayux Kahegu. That means the Holy Spirit. So we knew there was a Trinity. We knew that there was a God, that the Supreme Being that lived up above.
The work in interior Alaska was really started by student colporteurs. 2 student missionaries in 1924, they were actually pre-med students in Walla Walla, and they landed one summer by boat in Skagway. They went up over the Chilkoot Pass and across to Whitehorse, where they started on the Yukon River. They traveled all the way up to Dawson and then followed the Yukon River in a homemade boat all the way across the interior of Alaska, stopping at every village along the way and selling books. By the end of the summer, they had covered the whole length of the Yukon River and ended up at the Kuskokwim Bay, down here where Bethel is. When they had finished, they had left a legacy of Seventh-day Adventist literature all through interior Alaska.
The next year, in the summer of 1925, Harold Peckham and Sam Hance came to Kodiak Island. There they caught a boat to Valdez and on to Seward, canvassing both villages. From there they took another boat to Anchorage. Next, they walked 370 miles to Fairbanks along the right-of-way that was being cut for a railroad bed, all the while carrying their books and selling them whenever they met someone.
They sold in Fairbanks for over 2 or 3 weeks until finally they were asked to leave. They left Fairbanks and traveled all the way back down, this time coming down through to Valdez.
As if that wasn't enough hiking for one summer, Sam Hance decided to walk to Chitna and on down the Copper River to Cordova. The Copper River was at flood stage and presented many challenges, but he made it.
For many years as a kid, we worshiped on Sunday. That was, I was born in 1938, but I can remember things back in the early 1940s, or even when the Navy planes used to fly over our village in Craig, Alaska, that we worshiped on Sunday. Everybody knew that Sunday was a day to worship on back then. But one day that one of my aunts came to the house on Saturday morning, real early in the morning, and Mother was saying, "Why is Aunt Bessie coming so early in the morning?" Something must have happened in town. Of course, we didn't have telephones back in those days. You had to go, you wanted to tell somebody something, you had to go to their house to tell them. She said, "I dreamt last night," he says, "that, and I couldn't wait too long to tell you. It was so true and vivid. I can remember every part of the dream." He says, "I dreamt that a man was coming into our town. He told us we're going to worship on a different day than Sunday." Of course, that caught my mother's attention, all her attention, and we sat down to listen to what she had to say. She says, "And only we're going to worship on a different day, but our diet's going to change too. We're not going to eat the same type of foods we're eating now. And certain types of drinks we're not going to be able to drink." And of course we're thinking, boy, that's quite a vivid dream that my aunt had. Of course, I was about 6 years old, and I can remember that just like it was yesterday. This was like in early fall, just before winter. She told us that. And here the following spring, a fellow by the name of Stuart Emery came to Craig, and they rented a small little apartment to hold our meetings in. I remember them having a organ that they pumped with their feet to play the music. It was like accordion, only they pumped the organ with their feet to get the air to go through it, and then they played the organ. We sang, and when they came, there was six families waiting for them. Because the dream kind of spread through our little community, and there were 6 families waiting for this Stuart Emery to show up. Little did we know, at that time he was a Seventh-day Adventist. And as we went to the meetings and we sang songs, and it wasn't too long before my mother got baptized. My Uncle Sam Thomas got baptized, and my Aunt Bessie got baptized, and Elizabeth Nelligan got baptized. And Dolly Tom, I don't remember she got baptized. I think she accepted, due to her age, was accepted in the church on profession of faith. But that's how we became Adventists, through a dream. That was probably 44 or 45. I can remember right during the Second World War. And we've been Adventists ever since then. And it's quite amazing that you look at this series, read the Bible scriptures, or Jacob in his dream, and the ladder. Christ, or God, send a dream to my aunt. And that's why we're still Adventists today.
As the North began to open up, sailors brought disease which devastated the native villages. Many of the adults died, leaving many, many orphans.
Especially in the unentered Bristol Bay area. Pastor Thomas H. Watson responded to the need by starting an orphanage and a school at Conacanac, just 6 miles from what is known today as the city of Dillingham. Ellen White once told Watson,
"Let no one take you away from the work there."
he was true to her counsel, spending 25 years of his life spreading the gospel in Alaska. Several Adventist school teachers, like Josie Moody, came to the Bristol Bay Area in the early part of the 20th century to assist Watson. Other Adventists fled the Depression in the lower 48. The Ray and Mabel Smith family arrived with less than $30. The smelly settlement contained a dozen white people, 2 trading posts, 2 fish canneries, and a cemetery. There were no streets and garbage washed up on the shore. The Smiths opened their home for church until the first church was built in 1941, nearby in Aleknagik. It was lit with gas lamps and even had a pump organ for song service. 4 years later, to better serve older Alaskan orphans and Native students, the Bristol Bay Mission School became Alaska's first boarding school.
The pioneer spirit of those early Adventists touched every corner of Alaska. It was really then as now that these self-supporting missionaries went to every corner spreading the message of the gospel as we know it.
Greetings from Northwest Alaska. I'm embarked on the adventure of my life, trying to start a church here and support myself with aviation. But we're enjoying the experience, and we praise God that He's looked after us so far. It's almost a year that we've been working on this. So praise God.
Up north, educator Frank Doherty and his wife Isla opened the door for our church in the Arctic. Isla was a nurse, and Frank taught at Barrow's Eskimo School. Frank was the one who organized the rescue party for Will Rogers when his plane crashed near Point Barrow in 1935. In 1939, they moved to St. Lawrence Island, where they started a school for village children in Gamble, and held Sabbath school as well. When the Doherty family left the island 7 years later in 1946, the Native members in Gamble remained faithful.
Back in 1979, when my wife and I first started our ministry on St. Lawrence Island, I remember some of the first converts of the Dohertys. Robert Tunyon had passed away, but his wife Flora was there in Gamble, and we worshiped with her. And in Savunga, where we lived, Nathan Noonwook was our head elder. It's interesting that just recently, Nathan's 2 sons, Chester and Dwight, were baptized.
Conference President A.L. Zumwalt and pilot Fred Frakes flew a mission plane from Nome to Gamble with a minimum navigational aids carrying supplies to build a church. On the return trip, they took children from the island out to attend the newly opened Bristol Bay Mission School.
My name is Jack Libby, and I'm the captain of the Rollo. This is Dillingham, Alaska. This is Lake Aleknagik, and this whole barge of kids is going out to have fun in one of our summer camps. We have 4 in Alaska. A lot of the early camps in Alaska are fostered by the mission school that we have down here. That originally was a mission school in the 50s.
My dad came up here to set up a cannery so that the students at the mission school would have a place to work. And so I was 12 years old when I came up here and went 1 year to the mission school, and then it burnt. So we lived 2 years at Aleknagik, and we had dogs and dog teams, and I fell in love with Alaska. Probably 15 or 20 Native kids went there at the mission school at the time.
That was the beginning of a lot of our work, and that seed planted in the hearts of those kids has borne fruit in generations after that, which has helped develop our work in different communities. But it was kind of primitive at the time, but most of the kids, you talk to them now, even though they're older, they talk about their time at the Mission Lodge and the Moody's and the Smiths and the Libby's, the Wrens.
All my siblings got baptized to the Adventist church except for one. And my mother told the priest, well, I'm going to take my siblings and put them to the mission school, and she had to talk to the priest on why She wanted them to be taught about the Bible the way that she understands it. And the priest, I remember, came to our house and he kind of told my mom that she was going to be lost, and she said, "No, I'll follow the Bible instead of following what you have to say."
My name is Wendell Downs. I'm the pastor of the Dillingham, Alaska Seventh-day Adventist Church. We're going to be taking a little flight today over to one of our local villages close by, two of them actually. One is Manakotuk, and then a little farther away over to Togiak.
Well, I'm Jim Bingman. I live in Dillingham. Started going to Togiak 10 years ago and visiting one. And that's grown into a church of 15 to 20 that come regularly. I've lost 3 airplanes in the process.
Our regular church membership here in Dillingham is probably around 20 to 50.
This plane belongs to Judy and Gavin Thompson.
In 2006, my husband Gavin Thompson and I and my daughter Melissa arrived, and little did we know the adventures that awaited us.
What we're doing right now is we boxing the fish that we processed yesterday morning. As you can see, they all in plastic bags and they're frozen, and Judy packs them into a box, usually 10 or 12 in a box, and from there they go to this table here where they get banded, and Melissa records all the information on the end of the box while I'm banding them, and then they go to the freezer van. One thing about these fish, they no longer have any issues. Not like some of our folks.
We began to notice that a lot of people were disappearing during Sabbath school.
You know, I was deacon and they wouldn't take the plate, and the other deacon was my wife's boyfriend, and the other side wouldn't take the plate from him, and it was a mess. So I come home crying every Sabbath, and I'm not going to do this anymore. So I knew a fella in Togiak, Russell Greenlee, was a son of a teacher that I had in academy. And so I said, well, I know Russell's over there. I'm going to go visit Russell. So I went over and started visiting Russell and his family.
And as we asked around, we discovered that these people were flying out to some of the local villages to run church services in Sabbath school and do Bible studies.
There's actually about 8 of us that leave, or 9 that leave church and head to the different villages. And one story where the Lord has definitely blessed us, and it was a miracle, that we feel that it was a miracle, is when we first went to Ekwok, there was a little village chapel, and we were told that we could use the village chapel to hold a service in. And so we were given a key, and
by one of the native people. They handed us the keys.
One of the people there, and they said we were welcome to use their chapel. And come to find out about 2 weeks later.
Well, they gave us the keys and said, please go into Dillingham and make more keys.
Right.
Because we don't have enough keys to give you. So take these, have keys made, and when you come back next Sabbath, bring them with you.
Yeah. And we felt that was
a real trust thing of the native people for us.
And a miracle that the Lord gave us a place to visit and a place to actually hold a service. And it turned out that the church, the little village chapel, the pastor of that church was not comfortable with us being in his church, so he took the key, asked if we could have the key back, and we gave it back to him, and we now had to look for someplace else to hold our service. Yeah. And we talked to one of the ladies there in Ekwok. She's actually the postmistress. And she mentioned, well, that's no problem. You can have your service right here in City Hall. And we asked her where City Hall was, and she pointed to a door, and she said, it's right through that door. And it ends up that City Hall and the police department and the fire department.
And the jail.
And the jail and the post office are all in one building, and it worked out fine for us because it was already heated. And when people come in and out of the post office, they come into our service, and they might sit down and start singing. They may get up and leave. We have people coming and going for an hour.
It's kind of a thoroughfare, but that's okay. They get familiar with what we're doing, and we're consistent every Sabbath at 2 o'clock. We're there, and they just have gotten an idea of who we are and what happens there at City Hall. We don't have to worry about the other little chapel. We had to worry about heating it with wood heat and getting a key and all of that. And this was perfect. We have lights and heat, and we just walk in and it's ready for church.
We have our church body that stays here. They do ministry work here in town.
We've been coming down to the jail for a number of years. One of the pastor's wives started a jail ministry, and 7 days a week we come down here if the inmates want, and we give them Bible studies. We have a little program like we have singing for a while. Bristol Bay area has about 32 villages. They always end up here, either coming or going, and sometimes both. And so when we do Bible studies in our program, we get to touch a lot of lives. What they learn here, they take back home, and it's very helpful to them.
Over the years, there have been a number of challenges to the work in Alaska, especially in Togiak. The only way to get out there is by plane or by boat in the summertime. So it's not cheap to fly out there every Sabbath. The conference has a budget for the mission plane that's based here at the hangar in Dillingham, Alaska.
It's dead.
And the budget is equivalent to approximately 2.5 hours flying per month. And that is mostly reserved for the pastor, Wendell Downs, who also looks after the church at Aleknagik and Manicodic and Ekwok and some of these other villages. So there's not very much budget for flying time to get to the villages. So we came to a debate as to how we were actually going to fund the trips out every Sabbath. And finally, we just decided that if God provided the airplane and God provided the hangar to put it in, then surely He could provide fuel to keep it in the air. So we decided that since the budget was completely used up for that month, but we still wanted to go, we had an airplane, we had good weather, we had people willing to go, we said, okay, we're going to go.
I like to go over to Togiak when there's room, and what I do when I go over there is invite people. This is late in the season, so we're going to pick some of the wild spinach or sourdough. These are beaver trails going through here. You can see where the beaver's been cutting down the brush. And when you give them to elders, they get so happy, because they're unable to get it for themselves. What they do is they cook it up, boil it up, and then they mix it with into Eskimo ice cream. And I invite them to come to church. A lot of people over there know me, so I usually go visit from door to door and invite people to come to church, and they usually say thanks for stopping by, thanks for the encouragement, and we'll plan on coming to church. And that makes me feel good because a lot more are going than when we first started going over there.
Behind me here you see the old Togiak Seventh-day Adventist Church. This Togiak building was moved here from another location. It actually had been donated when somebody apparently had died in the building, and the people of that community didn't want the building around anymore. So Adventist missionaries took it apart piece by piece and transported it here, where it was rebuilt in the 1950s in this location. The student mission program actually started in the early 1970s. My wife and I came as young student missionaries to Alaska back in 1972, and at that time, Ole and Vonnie Olson were living right here, just around the corner. We'll see it in the little building that served as a parsonage, and they had Vacation Bible School and church right in this building here. Behind us, we see the new Seventh-day Adventist church that is just under construction.
Gavin and I were going over there to finish the baptistry before camp meeting, and we were going to fix that up and get it going because there was 2 girls that wanted to be baptized this spring during native camp meeting, but things happened that we didn't get that done.
My advice to anybody, if you go out in an airplane, especially in winter, dress in the clothes that you would like to land in, irrespective of where the landing is. And take your emergency bag with you. Don't leave it behind on the back of the pickup. You might just need that stuff.
I mean, we weren't thinking of anything going wrong. I climbed up to 700 feet, and when I hit 700 feet, I flew into the bottom of a cloud, and so I got down out of that just almost immediately, lowered the nose, and the next thing that I could see out the side windows, I could see down, I could see a couple miles either way, and all of a sudden I was going from Gavin's side of the airplane over to my side, and I saw something dark in front of the windshield, and I looked, and there was a bush about 300 yards or less in front of me, and I just had time to, I was traveling at 120 miles an hour, and I just had time to rotate, and we hit the mountain and bounced and continued to fly, then up the mountain, but right into the fog. And the next time we hit, we made a nice 3-point landing, and beautiful landing, but the airport was too short.
And the plane started to slow down, but just as it was almost stopped,
hit the other side,
and the plane flipped over.
It was the best toboggan sled ride you'll ever have. My head was about 2 inches from the ground, and brush coming through. The windshield was gone, brush coming in and slapping us, just slapping the window right in front of us, or slapping where the window should have been. And then the airframe would just mow it off. But yeah, you'd sliding, looking down the hill for a ways, and then a wing would catch, and you'd spin around and be looking up the hill going backwards. And on the way down, Gavin asked me if I was hurt, and I said no. I asked him if he was hurt, and he said, no, I'm fine. He said, how far are we going to slide? And I said, to the bottom. And he says, how far is the bottom? And I looked down the hill and up the hill, and I said, well, we're about halfway there. And so we just continued to slide. But we were talking. Neither one of us were petrified. When we got out of the airplane at the bottom, I took off and went up to get our New Beginnings book that we had with us. And we retrieved this part of it, and this was the part that we hadn't shown yet. We hadn't given these lessons yet. So the part that we didn't retrieve, we had made copies of, and so we had those in a different folder. But this was what was left of our New Beginnings book. And we continued the next week to go over there and continued our lessons. So it worked out fine.
I'd like to give you a new book to start with. I think you've made good use of this one, and we appreciate that very much. And I know you'll make good use of the next one too.
Well, thank you. That'll be greatly appreciated. We will make good use of it.
After Jim and Gavin crashed their plane, Jim was out of a plane at that point, and so Gavin and Judy purchased a plane, and Judy's learning to fly. They are taking a very active role in working in the village of Togiak.
From the experiences that we've had here, think of the churches throughout the North Pacific Union or throughout the whole lower 48 of the world, what it would be like if half of the church congregation every Sabbath left the church and went out and ministered to those cities around them and to the people around them. I guess that's what spreading the gospel is all about. And that's probably what I would say Sabbath is about. It's not just going to church and sitting in church and going home, but it's actually
It's telling somebody else.
Spending Sabbath, sharing the love of the Lord and sharing that day with others.
And you can share it with songs as well as, I mean, it doesn't have to be a sermon.
Right.
You know, it can be a Bible study, it can be a song service, it can be a craft with a song service. It can be anything,
Well,
any minister.
Our mission in Ekwok started out as kind of a sing-along, and we spent an hour singing with those people because they loved to sing.
And if they brought children, I took a Sabbath school craft to help occupy them.
Reaching our young people with God's love is so important. We still put our young people first here in Alaska.
We're taking some junior campers up the lake to go to Camp Polaris. And if you want a real adventure, you can come to Alaska, in rural Alaska this way, and really enjoy the scenery and enjoy a rich, inspirational summer out with a bunch of kids. And it's tremendous how this outreach in the community does to these kids go home and tell their parents what a fun time they have, and they've learned things that will follow them throughout their life. So if you want to have fun, come to Alaska and enjoy some of our Alaskan camps. Rural Alaskan camps, they're the best.
We love Alaska summer camps!
Hi, my name is Dave Crockett and I pastor the Palmer Seventh-day Adventist Church here in Palmer, Alaska. The North Pacific Union has challenged each of their churches to be involved in evangelism twice a year. You may have heard about it. It's done a lot overseas, but we've decided to incorporate it here in our local church. We have just finished our first series, and we had a wonderful person come to this first series. His name is Ken Pysz, and I'd like to introduce him to you. He's a gold miner. If you want to know about gold mining, he's the guy to talk to. Had lots of experience in finding that yellow dust here that's worth so much. He wanted to know about the Sabbath, however, and where he was attending, they couldn't answer his questions.
And here we are coming down the willow side of Hatcher Pass. Kind of give you a better picture of what it looks like here. And this is where my claims are at. And from here we got a beautiful shot of the creek drainage. I've got 2 claims on the upper end, I've got 2 claims in the center section, and 2 claims on the lower end. And I see we have hang gliders here for entertainment today. They're usually out here on the weekends, and I think he's bleeding off altitude right now. Circle around and land down on the center 2 claims where the road crosses.
My dad's Ken Pysz, and this is Pat Owen. I was doing my dietetic internship in Nome, and she was my preceptor.
You know, we'd get lots of students up, and they didn't have anything to do, so we'd take them with us to do whatever we're going to do. And
I was up there for about
3 weeks.
3 weeks in Nome.
All my life, I've spent looking for things of interest and of value. When I was 24, I came to Alaska. I was born and raised a Catholic. I never seen a Bible. Although I was baptized, I was confirmed, I was an altar boy, I sang in the choir, did all that stuff. I had no idea what was in the Bible. And one of my co-workers, I don't know how religious he was, but he did quote some Bible scriptures periodically. And I thought that was kind of awesome. You know, how he could speak of things in the Bible, and it got my curiosity. And I thought, I've got to find out what's in the Bible. I've got to learn that.
Pat invited me over to her family's house, and we enjoyed a Sabbath potluck. And you had actually invited me to go to church, but I wasn't familiar with church at that time, so I didn't go. But afterward, you came and picked me up. You had myself and several other people from church over. And we went out on the road and we looked at the muskox, and that was pretty neat. And your son broke out that Bible game, and I was being polite. I wanted to play with him, but I couldn't answer one of those questions because I had never read the Bible before. And so, yeah, that stuck with me. I knew, yeah, but I knew at that time, okay, something is missing in my life.
Now, my children, they grew up believing in God, but I don't think they didn't go to, they went to some churches, they would go to the Kingdom Hall occasionally. They weren't into any heavy religion.
So I left Nome, I graduated the dietetic internship, and a few years, probably 2 years later maybe, I had taken enough bumps and bruises in my life that I knew something was missing. And I started attending a church. The experience with Pat never left me. I met my husband about probably 2 years later, and he happened to be Seventh-day Adventist. And it was comforting to reflect back on my experience with the Owens family, that wonderful day that I had with them. And so I was pretty much open to the Seventh-day Adventist beliefs lifestyle, because I saw what a positive experience Pat and her husband and children had made for me.
But you sent me a picture of your wedding invitation or something with this letter telling me the whole story. I was like, oh, wow.
Yeah. It stuck with me, and I always wanted to let Pat know.
You started going to church with him?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, so I went through the prophecy seminars. And after that first night, I decided that was what my future was going to be, and gave my life to the Lord there. I got rebaptized with him into the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
Let's see. Oh, wow. I seen a flash in the pan. I seen a flash in the pan. And there we have gold in the pan.
Because it was just phenomenal to me to realize that just living everyday life to me as I knew it would ever have any kind of an influence like that. And I just thank the good Lord for allowing us to share. Because I don't take any credit for all that. I just try to live a Christian lifestyle and go from there. Mm-hmm. So to me it just showed that, you really don't have to preach doctrines and gospel, you just have to live it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
you can see that with your dad too, because he saw something, because it went the next step further, right?
Yeah. We started, Jason and we came up to the area for a Jamie George concert. And my dad isn't really the violin type. So, lo and behold, my dad loved the music, and he just had a wonderful time with the Palmer Church. And there in the bulletin, it said there was to be a prophecy seminar coming up soon. And remembering back that on my experience, that's what sold me on the Seventh-day Adventist Church. I told my dad, oh, Dad, you really have to go to these seminars and learn what these folks have to say. He ended up going to every single night, in fact, and he brought his 86-year-old friend Helen along, and they were just truly blessed by the seminars.
And my recommendation would be to put the seminar on often, twice a year probably, because there's people like me that are wandering around looking for the truth, searching for the truth, wanting to get the answers. And the golden opportunity would be a presentation as they had presented and put on. It was a great, great wake-up.
So it's incredible to see how God works. In this case, it kind of reversed the generations. I was able to share our faith with my father, which is so special to me. It's so important to just be a good example. Show your love, show Jesus' love to everyone that you come in contact with. It's incredible. You'd never know what impact you're actually having on these folks. Even if outwardly they're not expressing it, you could end up finding out in the future the incredible influence you've had, how God has worked through you without you even really realizing it. Simple hospitality goes a long ways.
Stop and think. Someone, a brother, a sister, a mother, a father, a friend, someone opened God's Word and shared with you. And as a result of the Holy Spirit speaking to your heart, you came to know and understand the grace that we find in these pages and the love of God. And you became a part of this living, vibrant body of Christ that we know. Now, can you do any less? There are people here in Alaska who are looking for an understanding of who God is, much as a starving man looks through the window of a lavish bakery. Can we do any less? Our calling is to share the light as the lights go out.
Jesus, Jimmy, we took. Jimmy, Mata, Jesus, be we took. Nan ragataha, nan ragataha, nan ragataha. Jimmy, Mata, Jesus, be we took. Nan ragataha.